Guys, welcome. Today we're going to be learning about Latin America and their civilization. So, Latin America does have a very rich history. Their history goes back a long, long time ago since people began starting to migrate to Latin America via what is believed the land bridge connecting Latin America to Asia. So, let's get into it. The first real civilization here is going to be the Olmec. However, let's talk about this real quick. Latin America, there's the Mayans. They're constructing large pyramids, similar to the ones in Egypt. Some of these pyramids you can actually stand in front of and clap. And when you clap, the sound it makes bouncing off the pyramid sounds like a bird. You can look at videos of Mayan temples that sound like birds, and that's pretty cool. The Maya, along with other ancient civilizations, thrived in what is not Latin America. What is Latin America? I'm not sure why it says not. Okay, so the Olmecs is our first civilization, and the Olmecs are known as the rubber people because it's derived from a tree, the rubber tree. That's where their name comes from. They're the first known civilization that are developed in Latin America. They're known as the mother culture. So all the other civilizations are going to branch off the Olmecs. The Incas come from the Olmecs, the Mayans come from the Olmecs, the Aztecs come from the Olmecs. They're the first one, they're the OG. They're going to live along the Gulf Coast, what is called the Yucatan Peninsula in that area, the Gulf of Mexico in that area. It's believed they were very skilled farmers. It's also believed they have large cities. But honestly, guys, we don't know a whole lot about them. One of the few things we do know about them is they produce these large heads. Over 20 of these gigantic heads, and if I were to stand next to this, I would come up to about halfway. They're huge. Each head is unique. They have different eyes, they have different noses, different lips. Some of them are wearing different helmets. We're not sure what these giant heads are. It's believed it's possibly leaders and rulers. Could also be gods. It could even be sports stars, right? They do have sports, and potentially they're sports celebrities of the time period, but we're not sure what it is. We have some good ideas, but no one knows for sure. The Olmecs, they had these advanced cities. It's believed. Again, we don't know a whole lot about them. Their oldest city is what's called San Lorenzo. Obviously, they were known for their huge sculpture heads. And around 600 BC, they begin to decline, potentially because of famine, drought. Maybe they overfarmed their land, which led to, uh, you know, um, crops failing and things like that. So they're considered a cultural hearth, like I kind of mentioned earlier. They're a mother culture. Um, that's the Olmecs. They're the OGs. Everyone else comes from them. Next, we have the Mayans, and you might be familiar with them because in 2012 the Mayan calendar ended. It didn't really end. It's cyclical, like this circle here. This is actually an image of their calendar. So the Mayans, they lived in villages off southern Mexico and the northern Central Americas as early as 1500 BC. However, they really don't hit the height of their empire till we're in the early ADs, around 250 ADs. They're going to build these massive cities. They're going to have these gigantic temples and plazas and palaces. Their temples look very similar to the Egyptian pyramids. Kind of interesting. They're incredibly advanced with science and technology. Like I said earlier, they're able to create temples that if you stand in front of them and clap, it sounds like a bird. Um, they're really big into the Quetzalcoatl bird and the a certain type of snake. I forget what the snake is called. So those are two of their big gods. They create a 365-day calendar. It's pretty impressive. They're the first civilization to start using the number zero in Latin America. They're going to develop a writing system. They have carved symbols. In AD 900, the Maya also started banding their towns and cities. They kind of just disappear. And no one knows what caused them to disappear. People have speculated aliens. Other people have speculated that it was due to over farming. famine, disease, drought, we're not sure, but they kind of just disappear, and no one knows why. So, kind of a mystery. And one of the reasons why no one knows a whole lot is because we're still finding stuff about them. Their temples are in the thick Lacandan jungles in southern Mexico and Guatemala and places like this. And it's tough to access some of these places. So some temples they built are still undiscovered. And their writing system, their writing on the temple walls and stuff, some people have never read before. So we're still learning about the Mayans. This is their capital city. Um, Tikal, that's what it's called. This is their capital city. You can go here on Google Earth. You can see how dense the jungle is right outside this. At its height, all of this would have been cleared out around here, but obviously today, with the jungle slowly reclaiming it, um, people have to constantly tear down trees and stuff for us to be able to visit Tikal. All right, the Aztec Empire. The Aztec Empire actually started very violently. Um, it was a group of people, and a prince was going to marry a neighboring princess, and they killed the neighboring princess. And it's a very gross and gory story, and there's a lot of bad things that I'm not going to tell you about. But the Aztecs then fled that area, and they were looking for a new home. And legend has it they were to build their capital city where there was a eagle eating a snake sitting on a cactus, prickly peared cactus, in the middle of a lake. And this legend you can actually see on the Mexican flag. If you look at the Mexican flag, you can see it's obviously red, white, and green, but then in the middle of it, you see an eagle eating a snake sitting on a prickly peared cactus in the middle of a lake, on an island, essentially. So the Aztec Empire, they do have a political system. They are controlled by one leader. The most famous leader is going to be Montezuma. Um, there are all sorts of movies about the Aztecs. The Aztecs are going to move from northern Mexico into what is now known as Mexico City in about 1300. They're going to build their capital city, Tenochtitlan, in the middle of a lake. This lake's huge. So they build it in the middle of a lake. So the only way to get to them is by taking these bridges out to them. So Tenochtitlan, that's their capital city. Today, that lake is no longer there. It's gone. They're going to create causeways and roads made out of earth to access the capital city. They're going to create what's called chinampas. Chinampas are these like floating little islands where they can farm on. So literally, they're terraforming they have the lake, and then they're building these little wooden rafts, filling it with dirt, and farming on these little wooden rafts that they call chinampas. Pretty cool, pretty impressive. So they're pretty advanced. The Aztecs ultimately are going to collapse because of a guy named Hernan Cortez. We're going to learn about him later in the week. The Incas, on the other hand, the Incas are in southern Latin America. They're down by Peru. The Incas are going to live in the mountains. It's incredible what they did. They have thousands and thousands of miles of roads they're going to access. They're mainly in charge of South America until about 1533 when they're finally defeated by the Spanish and a guy named Francisco Pizarro. Their capital city is called Cuzco. If you've ever seen the movie The Emperor's New Groove, it's a cartoon movie. One of the main characters is named Cuzco. That whole movie is kind of about the Inca culture because they're really big into llamas as well, and there's a lot of other things. So it's a kind of a good movie that is related to the Incas. They're going to build complex cities such as Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu looks like this. No one knows why it was built. We have no idea when they built it or why they built it. It's also believed they may have also carved that mountain in the background because if you kind of turn your head, it looks like a face. Okay, it looks like a face. You have a nose and a mouth. And if you look at this from other angles, it really looks like a face. So there is a rumor that they may have even carved the mountain to look like a face. Who knows? Kind of interesting stuff, though. So the Incas, unfortunately, they didn't leave tons of writing for us. but they do have these ropes that they would tie cords together with, and no one's quite figured out what it meant. But there's tons and tons of these ropes with knots in them, and that might have been their writing system, but we're not entirely positive. So the Incas are still kind of a mystery. Um, it's impressive because they have over 14,000 miles of road that literally are going through the Andes Mountains, the second tallest mountain chain in the world. The Incas are very impressive. And you can kind of see where they were at. Um, all of these that we talked about, all these groups perform sacrifices to the gods. And they perform them obviously different because they're different groups of people. But that's something to keep in mind as we kind of learn about them. They are incredibly interesting, all of these groups of people. So yeah, hopefully you learned something new today.